Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 826A, and today's date is November 24th, 2015, and the title of this episode is, It's Time to Seriously Prepare for the Economic Collapse. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Now, as we approach the end of this year, we are noticing that the economic information that the U.S. government is providing, where the U.S. government central bankers are controlling certain agencies to provide to the public, it is starting to completely fall apart and separate from reality. And we know they can control statistical numbers. They're great at doing it. They're great at making it look like the economy is doing well when actually it is rotting from underneath. And what we're seeing right now is a lot of these agencies, their narrative of the story is completely falling apart, and they're crossing. The consumer confidence level right now, we know the government has their own business which they fund, and then we have Gallup, which measures the consumer confidence, and this is completely separate and apart, and they're heading in different directions. And right now what we're looking at is 3 months ago, the consumer confidence, it was peaking, according to the government, at 8-year highs, and everything was absolutely perfect. Now we're seeing the biggest miss since 2009. And what happens is, as the economy continually declines, it gets harder and harder to prove that the economy is improving, because you can't say, okay, the consumer confidence has dropped by 20, 25, 30 points and say it's rising, because it will not make sense whatsoever in the models. And it'll be completely separate and apart from the Gallup poll. And we're starting to see that right now. Right now, the consumer confidence crashed from 90.4 from 99.1. They can't manipulate this because they would have a hard time explaining why they pushed it up. So what we're seeing right now is the economy starting to fall apart, and people are starting to recognize something isn't right. Now, as more and more people get laid off, more and more people realize this, because what happens is they're looking at the unemployment rate of 5%, and they're saying, oh, this is going to be easy. I can get another job. No problem. They go out, they put their resume out. They can't find that job. College graduates who are graduating, who have all this debt, can't find the job. And right now, the low-income Americans, basically all hope is gone. They're saying, okay, there is just nothing out there, and the consumer confidence for low-income household has completely plummeted. It has gone from a high of 90 down to 39, going back to 2009 levels. And here's another example where things are completely not making sense whatsoever. Now, I've been looking at the real estate, and I've gone back to the beginning of 2015, beginning of 2014, and I've been tracking everything, and I've been saying that, yes, prices in certain areas are coming down. It's starting to spread into different cities. And then the National Association of Realtors came out and said, yes, we have 4 months of median home prices that are declining. Now, Case-Schiller just came out and says home prices are growing at the fastest pace in the last 6 months. So we have two organizations which are not on the same page right now. But when I go and I take a look at certain areas, we see that home prices are definitely falling. We see that people are having a tougher and tougher time trying to sell their homes, and they're staying on the market longer and longer. And when I look at Case-Schiller, they're looking at a very specific set of cities. But when you zoom out from there, you see it's starting to spread in all different areas. And I think this is what the National Association of Realtors are looking at. Now, I don't believe the National Association of Realtors all the time, but this time they're measuring it, and they're actually saying, yes, prices are coming down. And I've been saying the same thing, and they're seeing the same thing as I am. Case-Schiller is still on that path that everything is fine and prices are going up. But when you really look, you can do this on Zillow, you can go on Realtor.com, and you can take a sampling of all different areas, and you can see what is going on. So we have two different organizations going in two different directions. And this is what happens when you approach a system that is dying. All the stories don't line up anymore. And we've had this back in 2008. The corporate media was out there saying one thing. We had Peter Schiff saying something completely different, and it turned out that Peter Schiff was absolutely right. Now, here in the United States, manufacturing is continually declining. We have hit a 25-month low. And basically, U.S. firms are reporting that output and new orders have completely slowed and they've come to a standstill. So something is wrong here where we're looking at all these economic indicators and we're showing that this economy is really starting to fall apart. And we have to remember, we have not been adding any jobs to the manufacturing sector. We've been losing jobs. And actually, if you notice, from 2008, we've lost about 1.4 million manufacturing jobs, and we've put on 1.5 million service-oriented low-paying jobs. And an economy cannot sustain itself on service-oriented type of jobs. It just cannot happen. And this is what we're seeing in the United States. Now, the U.S. government decided, the third quarter GDP numbers, they didn't grow enough, so we're going to have to manipulate them and go back and revise them. And this is exactly what they did. So they took the GDP numbers that were out there, and they took it and they increased it to 2.05%. How did they do this? Well, they added whatever was in inventory. And this is how they manipulate the numbers. The original inventory was $62.2 billion. They revised it and said, okay, now we have $100.6 billion in inventory, so that means GDP is going to be raised up. And this is exactly what they did. So we saw a $40 billion surge in inventories to boost GDP up. And they use Obamacare for this. They use many different tricks to manipulate the numbers. And again, these numbers are completely separate and apart from reality. They're pushing anything they possibly can into GDP numbers to boost it up. Now, the Richmond Fed shows that the third monthly decline is happening as wages are crashing most in 4 years. The last 3 times this happened, guess what? The U.S. was either in a recession or the Fed came out and said, okay, we need to unleash QE3. And from all this data that we're seeing, we are seeing more and more of these signs showing us that the economy is completely collapsing and it cannot be sustained. David Stockman is out there and he's saying another financial crisis is completely unavoidable. The central banks are completely out of ammunition. They have nothing else to do, but they always seem to manipulate something just to keep the system propped up just for a little bit longer. He said we're headed for a very severe monetary crisis and a period of great instability. The very opposite of what has been experienced for the last 6-7 years. Well, the last 6-7 years, we have been in a bubble state where the central bank controls the economy, where the central bank is keeping the system propped up with the auto loan bubbles, with the derivative bubbles, the treasury bond bubbles, the stock market bubble, the student loan bubble, the real estate bubble, and all these bubbles are about to pop. But he said what's going to change all of this is that we're reaching the point where the central banks are out of dry powder. I don't think the central banks have infinite power. I don't think they can keep interest rates suppressed forever if confidence is lost. And they're not going to be able to control the markets indefinitely, and they know this. And this is why they're making preparations to bring down the economy. Again, they want to do this their own way. They want to make sure they have everything set up to blame this on another group or a country. This is what this is all about. Because you have to remember, the United States government central bankers thought they'd be able to get into all these different areas. They thought they were going to be able to take the dollar and prop it up by making countries use the dollar on their natural resources. And when I say natural resources, I'm talking about their oil, which forms then the petrodollar. But what's happening right now is they are losing the battle out in the Middle East. They couldn't get into Venezuela, Argentina. And basically they tried to capture the natural gas market in Ukraine. And they just can't seem to get things right at this point. Everything they've tried, they kind of messed up. And they're losing control all over the place. And what we're seeing right now is a complete and total destruction of the petrodollar. We see China, on the other hand. They are making bilateral deals all across the world, and we see they're setting up yuan renminbi trading hubs. And every time they do this, basically it cuts into the dollar's power. It takes away from the dollar. And this is what we're seeing all around the world. And as we know, the IMF is saying, yes, we're going to be including the yuan renminbi in the basket of SDRs. So as we go forward at this point, they're going to do, and when I say they, the United States government central bankers are going to do whatever they possibly can to keep their system alive, which benefits them. The system does not benefit the people. The system right now is hurting the people because there's so much debt. The numbers are manipulated. We're not really getting a real reading of what is going on in the economy, and the economy is slowly dying. It's rotting from the inside. And at this point, it is a matter of time before this entire economy comes crashing down. And this is why, if you have not prepared at this point, it is time. As our government employees always say, here's the red line, and we've reached it. And you need to stock up on food. You need to make sure you have medical supplies. You need to make sure you have a weapon to protect your family. Keep cash on hand, gold and silver, because there will be a point where you'll still need cash. Because a lot of the people out there don't understand silver and gold, and they'll only understand cash, even though it will be devaluing and it will take many more dollars to pay for anything. You still need to keep this on hand. And you need to make sure you do have it. And as this economy continually falls apart, we're going to see it accelerate. And we're starting to see this right now as we approach the end of 2015. As we move into 2016, we're going to see this accelerate even further. And everyone needs to be ready because the collapse is coming. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.